All right. Good morning, grade 10s. I am going to give you your first lesson on ecosystems today. So if you've already started the notes, that's fine. If you haven't started, this is a great place to get yourself involved in the notes and getting them filled out. Now, I know not all of you have the actual booklet that we're using for this, so it's not ideal. If you have a printer at home, I have posted the booklet on the classroom. If you don't, you can just follow along with the booklet and with the notes and take notes on your own separate piece of paper. Will still accomplish the same thing. Might take a little bit longer to write it all down, but you will still get the same content as everybody else is getting if they have the notebooklet printed off or not. Now, I posted that check-in, the student progress check-in form on the classroom, and I've noticed that with this class, I'm not getting a ton of responses. So if you are watching the videos, I need you to let me know that you're watching the videos because I'm here at home and I need to know where we are all at, okay? I got some really good feedback from some of you, okay? Some people asking about some extra pieces of information that I could be providing or maybe to slow things down a little bit. And I will do my best to take those into account and try to tailor this so that it is the most successful for all of you. But in order for me to be able to do that, I need you to be responding to the things that I need you to be handing in, okay? So this is going to be a pretty brief lesson. I'm going to try to keep it under 10 minutes so that we're not overwhelmed by the length of it and just staring at PowerPoint slides. That being said, I'll be posting them a little bit more often, just in shorter chunks, okay? Now, I also got my hands on a document, sorry, what am I trying to say here? A video file for Planet Earth, which is amazing. So tomorrow, your lesson is going to be watching an episode of Planet Earth, my personal favorite one, the cities episode. I'll post it on the classroom. You can watch it there. Now, I just need you to answer some questions on either a document that I'm going to post. I might turn it into a Google form as well, just while you're watching it, okay? So that way that I can keep track of who is actually engaging and watching the things at home and getting involved. But they're very easy questions. Do not think that it's going to be difficult in any sense. I just am doing it so that I can keep up with a completion-based assessment, just to know that you are actually taking the steps towards being involved in this course, even from home. Now, we got some fancy looking new slides here. This is our ecosystems unit, okay? So here is your intro to the unit. First of all, what should you remember from last year? Hold on. I got to double check to make sure that I'm actually presenting this, because otherwise I will just talk and you guys won't be able to see anything. Yes, okay, right on. So what should you remember from last year? Let's take a brief look at this. If you don't remember this stuff, it's totally fine. So interactions within ecosystems, okay? What is an ecosystem? We'll get there, okay? In order to understand what an ecosystem we have to understand what a population is. A population is a group of organisms of the same species living in the same area at the same time. So it's those three things. It has to be the same species, has to be the same area, and has to be at the same time. So that could be the population of Steinbach, okay? Humans in Steinbach living there in 2020, okay? It could be all the raccoons living in the dumpster behind Sobeys, in 2024, okay? It could be anything like that. Just, it doesn't even have to be necessarily a year, just they all have to be there at the same time in the same area and be of the same species. It can be as small as the earthworms living in a puddle on the street that you grew up in, okay? That can be a population. Now, one step larger is a community. Now, a community is composed of all of the populations that live and interact with each other in a particular area. So now you've got a whole bunch of different populations. Remember, a population just means that they have to be the same species. So now you've got a variety of different species living and interacting with each other in a particular area. And then finally, the widest step outward is an ecosystem. An ecosystem is all encompassing inside of that. So it's got the communities of organisms interacting with each other inside of there. But then it also adds on the non-living factors in their environment. Basically, what that means is the setting that they're living in. Okay, so all of those non-living factors. Okay, so the terrain, the weather, the what am I looking for? The natural, phenomenon that happened, the time of day, okay, so whether they're nocturnal or not, okay, things like that, whether they live in the water, whether they live on land, whether they fly, okay, all of these things are non-living factors in their environment. Ecosystems can be large. They can be forests, croplands, rivers, lakes, oceans, okay, cities. Basically, any episode of Planet Earth 2 is an ecosystem, right? You've got jungles, you've got mountains, you've got islands, you've got cities, you've got forests, okay, anything like that. Now, ecosystems don't necessarily have to be big, though. Our minds like to think of them as being big, but they don't necessarily need to be big, okay? They can be small. You can have a really vast ecosystem living inside of a rotting log that's fallen over, okay? All the insects and all the bacteria and microorganisms living in there, that makes up an ecosystem, okay? It could even be a puddle of water, like I said, the earthworms and inside of there, okay? Ecosystems can be terrestrial. Terrestrial means located on land, or they can be aquatic, which means that they are located in water. If any slide is going too quickly for you, the beauty of this is that you can just pause it, finish the notes, and then move on with me as I'm speaking, okay? Every ecosystem has biotic and abiotic parts. What does biotic mean? It just means living, okay? Anything that's living is a biotic part of an ecosystem. Abiotic means non-living parts. So what are the biotic parts? What are the living parts of an ecosystem? Well, those are those are the plants, the animals, and the microorganisms. Those are the things that we know to be alive, right? Plants are alive, animals are alive, microorganisms are alive. The abiotic factors in an ecosystem include water, oxygen, light, temperature, nutrients, soil, and salinity even, okay? So the amount of salt inside of that environment. These are all just things that are the non-living parts. So these are, like I said, what make up an ecosystem versus just being a community. Ecosystem has the non-living parts involved as well. An ecosystem can be healthy or unhealthy depending on the interrelationships among its components. So you can have healthy ecosystems, you can have unhealthy ecosystems. Flow of energy within ecosystems. Interactions within ecosystems and among ecosystems provide a constant flow of energy for the organisms that inhabit the ecosystem itself. I will post these notes on the classroom. If you do want to watch some of these videos, they are a little bit, I don't always show them in class because they are a little bit, they have a really good amount of information in them, but they feel a little bit childish. You can watch them if you want, though, just for some extra info. How do we have energy flow throughout an ecosystem? Well, all organisms on Earth rely on energy from the sun. Okay, if the sun wasn't around, we wouldn't be able to get the energy that we need. And this is why it's these two processes. The first one is photosynthesis. This is what makes plants so amazing. Okay, it's a process inside the cells of plants and algae and even some bacteria that takes light energy from the sun and converts it into chemical energy. Now, chemical energy is basically just a fancy word for what we need to survive. We need energy from we need to eat to gain energy. If we don't eat, we won't be able to live. And that energy that we gain from eating is called chemical energy. So this is a process that we use called cellular respiration. Okay. It happens within the cells inside of us or inside of any organisms that are alive that can't get energy from the sun. And it converts energy stored in chemical compounds within these plants or within other organisms. and converts it into usable energy. So think about it like you've got a herbivore, some sort of animal that only eats plants. Well, it gets its energy from the plants that got the energy from the sun, right? So the plants get the energy from the sun, they convert it to chemical energy. And then along comes some sort of animal that only eats plants, and it gets its energy from the chemical energy stored within those plants. And then along comes an omnivore, okay, something an organism that eats plants and other animals, and we can get our chemical energy from either of those within the chemical compounds inside of them and convert it into usable energy for us. Okay, basically, we're just talking about, in a sense, we're talking about calories, right? Calories are a unit of energy, and calories we get from eating foods. So these are the different types of organisms inside of energy flow within ecosystems. Okay, you've got a producer. A producer is any organism that gets the energy it needs by making its own food. It produces energy. Okay, these are the ones that do photosynthesis: plants, grasses, algae. A consumer is an organism that gets the energy it needs by eating producers or other consumers, by consuming something else. So producer produces its own energy. Consumer consumes its energy. Producers transfer energy to consumers through things called food chains and food webs. That's basically like the example I just talked to you about on the last couple slides, right? You get the sun, which gives energy to the grass. Then you got a primary consumer. A primary consumer is a consumer that only eats producers, but only eats plants. That's a grasshopper, maybe. Now that grasshopper has energy stored within it, and it gives its energy to a shrew, which will eat the grasshopper. So a secondary consumer is a consumer that eats only primary consumers, okay? And primary consumers only eat plants. And then you've got the owl up at the top of this little food chain here, which is going to eat the shrew, which has eaten the grasshopper, which has eaten the grass, which has gotten it. We do technically all get our energy from the sun, but for the owl, it has to go through multiple steps. Unfortunately, food chains are not always this simple. They really never are. Usually they look something more like this, and we call this a food web, okay, because it's got multiple different working parts within it. So I want you to just pick a couple different lines here and try to see if you can think about what's actually going on, okay? So for example, here, I'll do one. You've got some grass here, and then you've got the grasshopper being eaten by, I don't know, what is that, a blue jay or something like that? Okay, so that's one, but there's a whole bunch that are going on here. And we're almost finished. We'll move on. There's a third section of organisms within an energy flow, and they're called decomposers. They don't seem like they're as important, but they really, really are. If we didn't have decomposers, the flow of energy wouldn't work on Earth. So what a decomposer does is it's an organism that obtains its energy by consuming dead plant and animal matter. Okay. Remember, we think about, food going bad, or if you take a look at the leaves at the end of fall, they're all dead and kind of gross. Okay, they've all kind of decomposed. This is because of decomposers, and what they're doing is they're actually returning that energy back to the soil, back to the earth. Okay, these are examples of these are bacteria, fungi, insects, snails. Okay, these are the things that kind of eat dead plants and animal matter and then return that plant and animal matter back to the soil. So what is this? What am I looking at here? This will be our last slide for today. This is something called a trophic pyramid. Okay, a trophic pyramid is a model that shows how the transfer of energy goes from one level of an organism to the next within a food chain. We will actually come back to trophic pyramids way at the end of the ecosystems unit to talk about how energy levels decrease, but there's a certain type of phenomenon that we talk about called bioaccumulation later on, where we talk about how bacteria levels and toxicity levels actually increase as we go up. So Very simple example. You've got grass on the bottom, and then you've got the bunny rabbits eating the grass, and then the snakes are hunting the bunny rabbits, and then you've got like a falcon or a hawk at the top here, which is hunting the snakes. So this is basically just a representation of the food chain. Okay, we will finish there because we're going to get into cycles. So we'll finish there for today. Kind of a brief lesson. If you want to move on, you can go and do so on your own when I post the notes on the classroom. Or I think I already have posted the notes. Yes, you can do that on your own. If not, just you can wrap it up here. You can take a look at some of the other stuff that I post on the classroom to see if you've maybe missed anything. And remember, just, if you're feeling overwhelmed, it's all good. Okay, just take some deep breaths. We will get through this. We are going to be working at a slower pace than we would normally in class, right? So don't worry about it. Everything will be okay. Okay. Tomorrow we'll watch an episode of Planet Earth, and you can work on some questions for that. Very simple questions. Have a good rest of your day. We'll talk tomorrow.